Russians accused of the Salisbury poisoning attack say they are victims of coincidence. Mass evacuations in the Philippines as a super typhoon approaches. And Kofi Annan farewell in Ghana.
This is SBS World News with Darren Mara.
Good evening. Two men named as suspects in the Salisbury nerve agent attack have tonight broken their silence. The pair, identified as Alexander Petrov and Ruslan Bosharov, are accused by the UK of trying to kill former double agent Sergei Skripal and his daughter Yulia. But they've told Russian broadcaster RT they were merely tourists.
Our friends have been suggesting for a long time that we visit this wonderful town.
Salisbury, a wonderful town?
Yes.
There's the famous Salisbury Cathedral, famous not only in Europe but in the whole world. It's famous for its 123-meter spire. It's famous for its clock, the one of the first ever created in the world that's still working.
During the interview, the men said they had both been in Salisbury and were the people identified in this surveillance video. British police say the names are aliases and that they're agents of Russia's military intelligence service. The member for Salisbury, John Glenn, says the statements made by the men aren't credible and don't match accepted intelligence. Super Typhoon Bangkut is closing in on the northern Philippines and is predicted to be the most powerful storm to hit the country since records began. Hong Kong is also expected to take a direct hit. CNN correspondent Ivan Watson is there.
Well, there have been warnings issued to about 16 provinces in the northern parts of the Philippines, notably Luzon, the northern island of Luzon, which is expected to experience landfall from the super typhoon sometime in the latter half of the day on Friday. The Philippines disaster relief agencies, they say that they've already pre-positioned tens of thousands of family food packs in anticipation of the storm. The Philippines Red Cross saying they're worried about 10 million people that they say could be affected, most vulnerable being those who were already displaced in July and August by monsoon rains. Now here in Hong Kong, we're not anticipating that the storm will really affect this place until end of Saturday into Sunday. Some of the Hong Kong airlines have already urged passengers to reschedule their flights at no additional charge. The city authorities have already been convening meetings to prepare for the potential of this storm ripping through here. And it's also believed that it could impact Macau and Guangzhou in southern China as well. One of the officials here from the Hong Kong Observatory says, quote, "We expect it to pose a considerable threat to the coast of Guangdong."
Ivan Watson reporting there. Well, Hurricane Florence has weakened into a Category 2 system as it moves towards the east coast of the United States. But a life-threatening storm surge and heavy rainfall are still expected. The centre of Florence will approach the coasts of North and South Carolina in the coming hours. Authorities say the storm poses a deadly threat to a wide stretch of the US eastern seaboard, capable of unleashing catastrophic flooding. Well, for the first time, Myanmar's de facto leader Aung San Suu Kyi has publicly admitted the Rohingya crisis could have been handled better, but she refused to make any concessions about the jailing of two journalists who were locked up after investigating alleged atrocities.
Aung San Suu Kyi taking her place among Southeast Asian leaders at an economic forum in Vietnam's capital, Hanoi. The focus of the talks, global trade tensions and sliding regional currencies. But she couldn't avoid difficult questions about the Rohingya crisis.
There are, of course, ways in which we, with hindsight, might think that the situation could have been handled better. But we believe that for the sake of long-term stability and security, we have to be fair to all sides. The rule of law must apply to everybody.
Since last year, at least 700,000 Rohingya have fled Myanmar's Rakhine state, forced out by a brutal military crackdown. The army has long maintained its troops were responding to militant Rohingya attacks. Just last month, a UN report found it must be investigated for genocide. Ms Suu Kyi's administration has largely denied allegations of murder, torture and rape. Today she acknowledged the government has to own the actions of the military, with whom she shares power.
Although we only have 75% of power, we have to accept 100% of the responsibility. That's what elected government is all about.
But when questioned about the jailing of 2 Reuters journalists who were locked up for their investigation into the killing of Rohingyas, Ms Suu Kyi went on the defensive. Warlone and Jaw So Oo were sentenced to 7 years behind bars for possession of police documents, a breach of the country's Official Secrets Act. They were handed the documents by the police, then arrested for having them.
The case has been held in open court, and all the hearings have been open to everybody who wished to go and attend them. And if anybody feels that there has been a miscarriage of justice, I would like them to point it out.
People of Myanmar have asked to turn the page, to go towards a democratic system and country, and they deserve better than this. They deserve a country where journalists are free to do their job and to keep the state institutions accountable for their actions.
According to local media reports, Ms Suu Kyi won't attend the UN General Assembly in New York next week, where she was set to come under further criticism. The Nobel Peace Prize laureate has finally addressed some difficult questions about her leadership and her country, but the global community won't be satisfied with all of her answers. Ben Terry, SBS World News.
A state funeral has been held in Ghana for former United Nations Secretary-General Kofi Annan. Leaders from around the world gathered in Accra to honour the Nobel Peace Prize laureate who died last month at the age of 80. Mr Annan led the United Nations for a decade. The ceremony marks the end of 3 days of national mourning for the respected diplomat who was a figure of national pride.
He sought truth and fought for peace in his mild, quiet manner. So to paraphrase the words of Winnie the Pooh, how lucky am I to have such a father that makes saying goodbye so hard. Rest in peace, Daddy.
Well, coming up after the break, Malcolm Turnbull resumes his fight with Peter Dutton, questioning his right to sit in Parliament.
Tomorrow at 7:30 on SBS. Join Chris Tarrant for an extreme railway journey into the Congo.
Are you afraid? Yes, I am. Don't be.
Then at 8:30, strap in for our Friday night movie, The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo.
I'm the guy you know better than my closest friends do. I want you to help me catch a killer of women.
The psychological thriller starring Daniel Craig and Rooney Mara.
I may have found something.
That's tomorrow from 7:30 on SBS.
What I like about you is the inside stuff.
Starring Golden Globe winner Jim Carrey.
The spark of greatness no one can see.
Stan's heartwarming new series, Kidding.
Where did you get your strength from?
I thought it was obvious. You.
One of the year's must-see television events.
Please welcome Mr. Jeff Pickles!
Brand new series, Kidding, now streaming only on Stan.
SBS is proud to announce our broadcast partners for the Premier League. Tab, Hungry Jacks, and Ashley and Martin Medical Hair Centres.
Lower calories, lower carbs, and an award-winning taste. Have it all with Heineken 3.
Wake up to yourself and try Nature's Own Complete Sleep Advanced with its mild sedative action. 4 out of 5 people who did felt better the next day. Love it or your money back. Wake refreshed with Nature's Own.
Technically demanding, detail-oriented, possibly one of the hardest cuisines to master.
It's French Week in the Chef's Line kitchen and things are getting serious.
Oh, wow. The Chef's Line, weeknights at 6 on SBS and 9:30 on Food Network.
It's Hugh Fernie-Whittingstall here.
The campaigning chef is on a mission to tackle the country's growing obesity crisis.
This is a crisis we can all do something about.
I'm ready to die. Hugh's Fat Fight, Monday 8:30 on SBS and on demand.
For SBS News anywhere, anytime, download the app or go to sbsnews.com.au.
Barnaby Joyce has accused Malcolm Turnbull of trying to tear down the government he once led. The former Prime Minister is urging his former coalition colleagues to refer the man who challenged him for the top job, Home Affairs Minister Peter Dutton, to the High Court.
Here this morning already, and they've got
Scott Morrison flipped from behind the barbecue.
I'll take that from you.
Jim's already displaced me.
As another deposed Prime Minister bites back.
In this job, all contributions should be gratefully received. They are, but as the Prime Minister, I'll obviously make the decisions in relation to our government.
Having quit the Parliament and flown to New York, Malcolm Turnbull tweeted, given the uncertainty around Peter Dutton's eligibility, he should be referred to the High Court as Barnaby was, calling and texting his former colleagues, encouraging them to vote with Labor and the crossbench.
It seems like he has an active campaign to try and remove us as the government. Boy, that is bitterly disappointing.
Only a couple of weeks ago, in fact, this matter was actually voted on in the House of Representatives. So, look, I think people have had enough of the lawyers' picnics on these sort of issues.
His former deputy won't rule out crossing the floor.
If there's a vote on the matter, well, I'll make my mind up at that time.
Hinting the Home Affairs Minister should refer himself over questions about his family trust benefiting from government subsidies in breach of the Constitution.
We all have personal responsibility to ensure that we are eligible to sit in the Parliament.
I've taken advice in relation to my position, which put the question beyond doubt.
Peter Dutton telling Malcolm Turnbull to retire with dignity.
I think John Howard's got the gold standard here. I think he conducts himself with dignity, and I hope that all former Prime Ministers can do that.
Scott Morrison pushing his government's economic strengths.
Who's ever for Greenway business here? There we go. Who's ever worked in the private sector here? There we go.
As a shovel-wielding Bob Catter threatens to bury it.
Why don't I just disrupt and cause mayhem until we get some decent government in this country?
Unless he broadens the banking inquiry and builds new dams.
Unless you're out there, Prime Minister, on a dozer with a hard hat, pushing that dirt up, then it's all a big mess of dog's droppings.
For now, the crossbench is resisting calls to refer Peter Dutton to the High Court, fearing it could once again plunge the 45th Parliament into a constitutional grey area.
Any absence of absolute certainty is now the standard for referral. Then what next? Who else is to be referred?
Get the ship turned around. Do your next 6 months, have an election and let the people decide.
Brett Mason, SBS World News.
8 Liberal Party members are battling tonight to win pre-selection in the Sydney seat of former Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull. The pre-selection for a by-election in Wentworth is taking place at a rugby club in Rose Bay in Sydney's east. Now, Mr Turnbull had a margin of 17%, but analysts say the Liberals may struggle to hold the seat after the controversial leadership change. The by-election will be held in October. Business magnate Sir Frank Lowy says he's opposed to moves to reduce immigration to Australia. Delivering the Lowy address tonight, he said the debate is focusing too much on the problems and not the benefits of immigration. A former refugee who built a global shopping centre empire, Mr Lowy says Australia can also afford to be generous towards refugees who come through established processes.
Let's learn from our history. Immigration has been great for Australia in the past. I believe it will be great for Australians in the future.
The families of 3 children killed in the New South Wales town of Barrowville nearly 30 years ago are devastated to have lost a key court application today. The Supreme Court refused to allow a retrial of a 52-year-old man who had previously been acquitted of 2 of the murders. And a warning for our Indigenous viewers, this story contains images of the children.
They came with such hope.
But these words from Justice Tom Bathurst crushed it.
The application must be dismissed.
It's not the first time we've been knocked back, so you try not to get your hopes up, but it's something we sort of always seen coming, which is sad.
Relatives of murdered children Clinton Speedy, Evelyn Greenup and Colleen Walker left devastated.
This is just another day. We've been kicked in the guts before by the court system and the law, but we're going to keep fighting.
The court deciding that the Attorney-General's application to retry a 52-year-old man over the deaths didn't stack up. The basis for the application was fresh and compelling evidence against a man who was previously acquitted of 2 of the murders at separate trials. Prosecutors now arguing for a combined trial for all 3 murders.
The court recognises that this conclusion does deprive the families of the 3 children and the Barraville community of the closure which they justifiably seek.
The judge acknowledged that the deaths were tragedies for both the families and their communities, but took only 7 minutes to hand down the decision that there would be no retrial, leaving family members here in tears.
We have done everything possible that was ever asked of us to have this retrial, to apply for that. Oh God, I'm just so livid.
It was the first time an application to overturn 2 acquittals had been made to a New South Wales court. Frustrated family making their mark on the court, others promising to keep fighting on their behalf.
Whatever you decide to do, we will put everything we can in terms of our resources and our energy and any other thing we can bring to the table behind you.
I'll be seeking urgent advice on the prospects of an appeal to the High Court. I'll also be urgently raising with Cabinet whether there is any need to change the law in this area.
It's 28 years to the day since Colleen Walker disappeared, but today these 3 families are no closer to finding justice. Matt Cannellan, SBS World News.
Well, for much of the past year, online food delivery giants have been under the microscope over allegations of worker exploitation. Now there are claims smaller operators are engaging in similar controversial practices, but they're slipping under the radar.
As the digital age makes food delivery easier for consumers, conditions for couriers often appear to be getting harder.
We ride a motorbike or bicycle on the road. I can earn a little bit from this job, but I have to take the risk of some life-threatening danger. I don't have any insurance. I'll have to accept all the consequences if something dangerous happens.
International student Kiet supplements his studies as a rider for food delivery provider Easy, which caters to Chinese speakers. But his work is hardly rewarding. Kiet says he's paid as low as $6 per delivery and often waits for hours between jobs.
It depends. If there are not enough orders in one day, I will get less than $150 per day.
Stories such as his prompting a fresh attack by the union on the delivery service industry.
They make a hell of a lot of money and the workers are injured, maimed and underpaid and are paying for the privilege of having to do that. It's horrendous and something that has to stop.
Easy boasts more than 200,000 app downloads across the country. Other Mandarin-speaking operators include Hark Hark. Popularity for both services is rising.
I think it's really convenient because I'm Chinese.
It's convenient. Sometimes I don't like to go outside.
Easy rejected any suggestion of mistreatment, saying riders were subcontractors rather than employees and therefore responsible for their own insurance. The contractor has strict company policies and training for the subcontractors. Their earning capacity is dependent on the amount of delivery jobs that they accept collectively and is not limited to just providing their service to us. The Transport Union is calling for federal regulations to ensure better conditions for riders. Omar Dabaj, SBS World News.
New video has been released of disgraced Hollywood mogul Harvey Weinstein propositioning and fondling a young woman during a business meeting. She claims that just hours later, he raped her.
The video shows Melissa Thompson about to meet Harvey Weinstein in his New York office. She was there to pitch her company's video and analytics service. She goes to shake hands, instead hugging her. They sit. She explains the technology using her laptop computer.
Data's so hot, right?
What's that?
Data's so hot.
It is hot.
Harvey Weinstein then asks if he's allowed to flirt with her.
A little bit. A little high. It's a little high. That's a little high.
Melissa Thompson says at that point, Harvey Weinstein was touching her under the table. She continues with her product pitch. He caresses her arm. At the end of the meeting, he asked her to join him for a drink at a nearby hotel. Speaking today, 7 years later, Melissa Thompson says she thought they were going to close a business deal.
It wasn't at 10 p.m. It wasn't an invitation to come to his hotel room. It was an invitation to a hotel lobby that was within blocks of the office. And so that to me felt much safer than being alone with him in his office.
Instead, she alleges, he raped her.
Hey,
Harvey Weinstein has already been charged in New York with sexually assaulting 3 women. He has pleaded not guilty to all charges, denying all non-consensual sexual contact. His is one of the most anticipated criminal trials in America. Melissa Thompson filed a civil lawsuit against him in June.
We don't have to live with things that are illegal and abusive, and we don't have to live with being raped when we think we're going to a business meeting.
Harvey Weinstein, whose downfall precipitated the Me Too movement, today, through his attorney, said Melissa Thompson's motivation in going public is money. Prue Lewan, SBS World News.
It was a controversial US Open women's final that caused a stir across the globe. But the winner, 20-year-old Naomi Osaka, has created a different kind of conversation in her native Japan, where the young athlete has been celebrated, particularly among its mixed-race minority.
The US Open women's champion, but a bystander on one controversial evening.
If you would.
She said, that she was proud of me and that I should know that the crowd wasn't booing at me.
Naomi Osaka is the first Japanese player to win a Grand Slam singles tournament. The 20-year-old's history-making triumph made waves across the world. Celebrations greatest in her native Japan, especially among the mixed-race minority who now have a new role model.
人として一人の人間としてものすごい素晴らしいなというか、僕はどうしてもやっぱりいじめられてたっていうのもあって、ちょっとなんて言うんでしょう、ひねくれた部分っていうか、ちょっとあるところも持ち合わせてると思うんですけど。
Osaka's mother is Japanese, her father Haitian. In racially homogenous Japan, biracial citizens, let alone international superstars, are rare. Known as hafu, as TV celebrity Jun Sojima well knows.
人と違うっていうのはやっぱり僕も小学校の時はすっごい嫌なことでしたし、なんで僕はみんなと色違うんだろうとか、みんなと同じになればいいのにと思ってたんですけど。
Though slowly increasing, there are fewer than 2.5 million legal foreign residents in Japan, or about 1.9% of the nation's population. One of the world's largest economies and the 4th largest donor to the UNHCR, Japan took in just 20 refugees last year. But, publicly at least, Japan's face is changing. In 2015, the first biracial Miss Japan was crowned.
Ariana Miyamoto, Japan.
Then Priyanka Hoshikawa, who has Indian heritage, won Miss World Japan in 2016. While Naomi Osaka's on-court victory is likely one of many to come, it could also help change attitudes on the sidelines. Sarah Arbo, SBS World News.
Coming up next, the weather, and Usain Bolt swaps his football boots for a trip in zero gravity.
Over 3 nights, in a worldwide first, these Australians will travel to the most dangerous places on Earth.
You're about to experience why people flee their homes and their countries.
And Australia will be watching it all live.
Go back to where you came from, live. Starts Tuesday, 2nd of October on SBS and on demand.
That's why I'm The Nick Scali Spring Sale ends Sunday. Up to half price off selected items.
Easy like Sunday morning.
Save up to half price. The Nick Scali Spring Sale ends Sunday. Choose wisely. You chose wisely.
For a foil that's 100% recycled, choose wisely. Choose Multix.
If the unexpected happens, capture it and lodge a quick and easy online claim with Amy. That's not very insurance-y.
It's like he's actually in the room.
That's why I'm The Nick Scali Spring Sale ends Sunday. Up to half price off selected items.
Easy like Sunday morning.
Save up to half price. The Nick Scali Spring Sale ends Sunday.
And I start the song. Clunk, 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 like I couldn't see anything.
These are your stories.
And this is The Feed.
Monday to Thursday, 7:30 on SBS Viceland and on demand.
They've both got off to a flying start. Now the mighty Merseysiders grapple the North London Dangermen in a clash of the top-tier Titans. Live, free and in HD, Tottenham versus Liverpool, Saturday at 9 on SBS.
The finance figures now, and the Australian share market closed at a 12-week low as the Royal Commission continued to weigh on the finance sector. The Big Four banks closed in the red. Myer surged as CEO John King bought up shares in the beleaguered retailer. And Woolworths lost 3.25%. Markets in Europe are mixed in early deals. The Australian dollar had a boost from better-than-expected jobs data, with the unemployment rate remaining steady at 5.3% in August. Usain Bolt has been making the most of his time away from pre-season training with the Central Coast Mariners. The 8-time Olympic champion was sipping champagne and floating in thin air, quite literally. His promotional shoot for a French champagne company took place in a zero-gravity plane. Bolt's participation was agreed to by the Mariners prior to departing for France. The 32-year-old is attempting to sign a professional contract with the A-League outfit. To the weather now, and in the major centres, partly cloudy in Brisbane and Perth, sunny in Sydney, Canberra and Melbourne, windy in Hobart and Adelaide. Looking further afield, partly cloudy in Auckland and Wellington, fine in Christchurch, rain in Samoa. In Southeast Asia, thunder in Bangkok and Singapore, partly cloudy in Denpasar, rain in Phnom Penh and Port Moresby. Further north, cloudy in Beijing, Seoul and Shanghai, rain in Tokyo, fine in Hong Kong. Heading west now, hot in Baghdad, showers in Beirut, partly cloudy in Delhi and Jerusalem. Some drizzle in Mumbai. Up to Europe, fine in Athens and Paris, cloudy in Belgrade, showers in Istanbul, partly cloudy in London and Moscow. To Africa now, rain in Addis Ababa and Lagos, fine in Cairo, showers in Algiers, Casablanca and Dakar, cloudy in Johannesburg. Over to South America, and some thunder in Asuncion and Panama City, rain in Bogota, also some rain in Caracas, cloudy in Lima, fine in Santiago. And lastly for North America, cloudy in New York, fine in Chicago, Denver and Los Angeles, thunder in Miami, partly cloudy in Toronto. That's the world this Thursday. The SBS News website has all the latest stories, and get news anywhere, anytime with the SBS News app. I'm Darren Mara. Good night.